Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
We do not know who you are, and we do not know why you are coming. When I am president, you are not getting into the United States of America.
A president who refuses to acknowledge the threat we face, and even worse, who acts as an apologist for radical Islamic terrorism.
Well, first of all, recognize it is a substantial problem, but like all of our problems, there isn't a single one that can't be solved, that cannot be solved with common sense.
Got a plan at the Citadel to do just that. And it starts with creating a no-fly zone and safe zones to make sure refugees are there.
China, they don't like to tell us, but they have total control, just about, of North Korea. They can solve the problem of North Korea if they wanted to. But they taunt us. They say, well, we don't really have control. Without China, North Korea doesn't even eat. China is ripping us on trade. They're devaluing their currency, and they're killing our companies. Thousands and thousands. You look at the number of companies and the number in terms of manufacturing and plants that we've lost, 50,000 because of China.
So
now,
you never
wait a minute.
putting a tariff on their
We've lost
goods to
anywhere between 4 and 7 million jobs because of China. What I said this. We have very unfair trade with China. We're going to have a trade deficit of $505 billion this year with China. A lot of that is because they devalue their currency. What I said to the New York Times is that we have great power, economic power over China. And if we wanted to use that, and the amount, and where the 45% comes in, that would be the amount based on their devaluations that we should get, What I'm saying is this. I'm not saying we do it. But if they don't start treating us fairly and stop devaluing and let their currency rise so that our companies can compete and we don't lose all of these millions of jobs that we're losing, I would certainly start taxing goods that come in from China. Who the hell has to lose $505 billion a year?
I'm sorry.
Let me say one thing about this. I'm a free trader. I supported NAFTA. I believe in the PTT because it's important those countries in Asia are an interface against China. And we do need China. Donald's right about North Korea.
Tariff. The buyer pays the tariff. If you send a tie or a shirt made in China into the United States and an American goes to buy it at the store and there's a tariff on it, it gets passed on in the price to the consumer. So I think the better approach, the best thing we can do to protect ourselves against China economically is to make our economy stronger, which means reversing course from all the damage Barack Obama is doing to this economy. It begins with tax reform. Let's not have the most expensive business tax rate in the world. Let's allow companies to immediately expense. It continues with regulatory reform. Regulations in this country are out of control, especially the Employment Prevention Agency, the EPA, and all of the rules they continue to impose on our economy and hurting us. How about Obamacare, a certified job killer? It needs to be repealed and replaced. And we need to bring our debt under control, make our economy stronger. That is the way to deal with China at the end of the day.
Neil, the problem with what Marco is saying is that it takes too long. They're sucking us dry, and it takes too long. It would just, you absolutely have to get involved with China. They are taking so much of what we have in terms of jobs, in terms of money. We just can't do it any longer.
He is right. If you put a tariff on the good, it's Americans who pay it.
Absolutely.
You're looking at me?
Yeah.
Prices go higher for...
Hey, can I tell you what? It'll never happen because they'll let their currency go up. They're never going to let it happen. Japan, the same thing. They are devaluing. It's so impossible for our... You look at Caterpillar Tractor and what's happening with Caterpillar and Komatsu. Komatsu's a tractor company in Japan. Friends of mine are ordering Komatsu tractors now because they've devalued the yen to such an extent that you can't buy a Caterpillar tractor. And we're letting them get away with it, and we can't let them get away with it. And that's why we have to use Carl, and we have to use our great business people and not political hacks to negotiate with these countries. And we don't need a weak person being president of the United States, okay? Because that's what we'd get if it were just... I'll tell you what, we don't need that. We don't need that. That's essentially what we have now, and we don't need that. And that's why we're in the trouble that we're now. And by the way, Jeff, you mentioned Boeing. Take a look. They order planes. They make Boeing build their plant in China. They don't want them made here. They want those planes made in China.
They're a mile
That's
away
not the
from it.
way the game is supposed to be played.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. Very briefly.
I'm glad you asked it, Maria. Here's our plan. We've all been talking about tax reform tonight, and paying for infrastructure is caught right up in tax reform. If you reform the corporate tax system in this country, which, as mentioned before, is the highest rate in the world, and we double tax, as you know, and what that's led to is over $2 trillion of American companies' monies that are being kept offshore because they don't want to pay the second tax. And who can blame them? They pay tax once overseas. They don't want to pay 35% tax on the way back. So beside reforming that tax code, bringing it down to 25% and eliminating those special interest loopholes that the lobbyists and the lawyers and the accountants have given, bring that rate down to 25%, but also a one-time repatriation of that money, bring the money, the $2 trillion, back to the United States. We'll tax it that one time at 8.75%, because 35% of zero is zero. But 8.75% of $2 trillion is a lot of money, and I would then dedicate that money to rebuilding infrastructure here in this country.
Well, I would suggest a fair tax system, and that's what we have proposed. A flat tax for everybody, no exemptions, no deductions, no shelters, because some people have a better capability of taking advantage of those things than others. You know, and then the other thing we have to do is stop spending so much money.
Our country has. Right now, corporations by the thousands are thinking of leaving our country. With the jobs, leave them behind. They're leaving because of taxes, but they're also leaving because they can't get their money back in. And everybody agrees, Democrats and Republicans, that it should come back in, but they can't get along. They can't even make a deal. Here's a case they both agree they can't make a deal. We have to do something. Corporate inversion is one of the biggest problems we have. So many companies are going to leave our country.
Which is why we...
Well, it's an interesting question because I'm very proud of my company. As you too know, I built a very great company, but if I become president, I couldn't care less about my company. It's peanuts. I want to use that same up here, whatever it may be, to make America rich again and to make America great again. I have Ivanka and Eric and Don sitting there. Run the company, kids. Have a good time. I'm going to do it for America. Okay? So I would be willing to do it.
So you'll put your assets in a blind trust?
I would put it in a blind trust. Well, I don't know if it's a blind trust if Ivanka, Don, and Eric run it, but is that a blind trust? I don't know. But I would probably have my children run it with my executives, and I wouldn't ever be involved because I wouldn't care about anything but our country. Anything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.